1982 was when the Cabal finished their reverse engineering of the mind wipe technology. The time frame that they had built their technology for memory wipe was also the same time frame that Voyager 1 and 2 were passing the Jupiter-Saturn area. And one of the things that Voyager 1 did for the Cabal was it informed them just how much build-out the Antarctic Germans had, just how much infiltration alien races were making into our solar system. It scared them. They didn't realize just how much the Antarctic Germans had built out. And so they altered their plans for world domination to speed up the timeline. Originally, they were thinking that they would do it over a period of a century or more. Well, they shortened the timeline to make it happen faster. Now, the reasons and how they did that was by you create a disease and you create the cure at the same time. You poison the food. You dumb down the education system. You keep promoting a fiat currency system. You conduct false flags so that the people ask for more security, so that the people are wanting to have a security state. So eventually, that's what they were wanting to do, is to get under a single despotic one world government. Well, that was around the same time frame that the Antarctic Germans, around 1986, discovered that their memory wipe technology had been stolen. And they did a few things in response to that. The destruction of the Space Shuttle Challenger was one, and then 2 months later, the destruction of the cooling towers at Chernobyl was the second one. They also moved all of their manufacturing and R&D off-planet, and they sent a plain brown paper package with a non-operational memory wipe technology to the President of the United States and to the President of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. Both of them got a non-operational memory wipe device with the time, date, and stamp from 1979 on the box. They would have done more, but the Antarctic Germans were worried about the cowboy U.S. President Reagan doing and resulting to nukes. So they left it at that. Plausible deniability. The 1990s, the moving of the Antarctic Germans, of the majority of their civilization and their R&D and their manufacturing off-planet, now changes them over to the Mars Germans. So just that's my term. The people that I met while deployed just referred to themselves as Germans. But this is just my terminology for keeping track of it. So in 1990, the Mars Germans acquired a new property on the moon so that they did not have to be as close to the Draco. Well, their lease originally included a clause that if they were to get out of it, they had to find a new tenant. Well, where do you think they found a new tenant at? The Cabal, all right? So they didn't have to go far. It was right there. Well, what did the Cabal have to pay for this moon lease? Well, they ended up paying for the moon lease with 25,000 ground troops so that the Mars Germans could use them for border control. Well, what that turned out to mean was the conquering of planets. So in order for the Cabal to get their moon base, they provided 25,000 troops. Now, where did they come from? Well, they came from every country on the planet that has a central bank. So 1991 was when the Cabal and the Mars Germans signed the Cooperative Action Treaty for the Cabal takeover of the moon base, as well as the creation of IDARF, the International Intergalactic Defense and Reaction Forces, the fleet, the SSP program that I was involved in. So thank you for bearing with me through all that to get to this point of how we got there for IDARF. I think we went through that already. The Earth units were split into two separate groups. There was the 3rd Panzer Division and the 4th Panzer Division. Now, the unit that I was a part of was the 3rd Panzer Division. And we were told that we would be helping indigenous populations defend their planet from an alien aggressor that was there to wipe them out. Now, what we didn't realize was that the alien aggressors, as well as our own forces, were being controlled and manipulated by the Draco. They were controlling both sides of it. An idea on the patches for the 3rd and 4th Panzer Division, and everybody from Earth had the center one to identify them. Now, again, as I mentioned just a minute ago, the propaganda that they spread was that the IDARF was there to help other planets fight off invasion. Now, who wouldn't want to do that? Sure, it's service to others. We're going to help them defend their home turf. Well, if they had told us the truth was that we were all operating under the same command structure, then they would have had major mutinies. There would have been a lot of fighting internally, and I think that it would have turned out very differently. So they did not tell the truth. Again, more of those lies. So my involvement in IDARF. The first 18 months were locked up in training. The training included 8 months at an underground facility that was referred to as the FIG, the Fort Indiantown Gap cave structure. Now, if you can imagine something the size of an NFL stadium underground, with that much open space, probably another 5 or 6 stories above that, we weren't allowed in that area because they claimed it was radioactive. So, but it was at least 32 stories high. So, it's a big structure. It's all underground. It was essentially a small city so that we would have the space and the room to do all the training and everything that we needed to do. So the first 8 months were when we learned how to work with our own nanite enhancement therapies. The next 6 months we spent on the moon learning about shipboard operations, firefighting, to where's the can at. It takes time for ground troops to learn all the different things that they need to do in order to get deployed from a ship to the ground. And then the last 4 months of my training was spent on Mars, in which we were doing combat deployment training. And it was essentially life in a suit, life in a combat suit for those last 4 months. Bless you. Here's a picture of the FIG, an idea of just how big it was. Around the top of the facility, there were these steel platforms that they used to great effect. I remember when I first walked in and I would see up to 175 feet of rope with a carabiner at the end, just kind of dangling and moving around. It was very surreal because it was like they each had their own frequencies. And so my first thought was, why do they have trapeze training? Well, it turns out that it was anti-gravitic training. And so you have to go through the process, and the lines were for safety. It was essentially a small city. It included a range, included hand-to-hand combat areas, hand-to-hand training, classrooms. A lot of the first 8 months of our training involved learning how to use our nanite enhancement therapies. And there's a technique that is a biofeedback where you are able to identify every part of your body and which parts and what feels like what. Well, if you've got a small cyst on one of your knuckles, you'll know exactly what that feels like. That allows you to use the nanite enhancement therapies to great effect for muscle control, for being able to turn on the night vision, for being able to turn on the auditory enhancements, for being able to turn down the need for sleep, for being able to turn off the need for food so that you don't get the growling stomach. So that was the majority of I'd say the biggest piece of our initial training was incorporating the nanite enhancement therapies. Now, after finishing up the training, we were deployed to what I'm referring to as Planet One. Now, I don't recall the name of this planet, but this was where we came up against the werewolf hybrids. They are 8 to 9 feet tall and a mechanical, biological being. They had hoses and different mechanical parts that were exposed through their skin. They carried a bladed projectile weapon with them. That was a cryogenically operated projectile weapon. There was, before we get into the destruction, I don't want to concentrate on that. The type of planet that this was, where we were stationed at, was reminds me a lot of Holland, in that the canals were the main method for moving around the city. So there were canals everywhere in the cities that we were deployed to. So that gives you an idea of what they look like. These pictures are from Holland, but it gives you a good idea of what they look like, as well as what the hybrid werewolves looked like. Now, the planet was about 2% larger than Earth. It had 60% landmass and 40% freshwater, 2 moons. I want to get through this so we can get to some question and answer. Planet 2, which is Calidus 3, is the name of the planet that I have recalled. That was our next deployment, and we were there for 67 months. Now, these are the spider-bear-like hybrids. Again, these are created beings specifically for a purpose. Now, they included anti-gravity within their biological mechanical makeup, so that they were able to change directions, alter their line of attack on a dime. This planet, Calidus 3, had a 32-hour day, and it was about the same size as Earth, maybe 4 or 5% larger. This landmass on Planet 2 had about 70% land and 30% freshwater. Again, freshwater, no salt water. This one had 4 moons, and the black moon that was there, we had named Waldo because it was so hard to find. So the joke was, where's Waldo? Their settlements were all below 50 degrees latitude, and none were ever built over 60 degrees. The population of about 4 billion when we made our first landfall. Unfortunately, that was severely decreased. Their civilization was at about the start of the Industrial Revolution equivalent here on Earth. So they had some technologies. But again, think gauges and steam and tubes, but nothing compared to modern advanced technologies. Their governments were locally organized and run, either a village or a town elder or town elders. They did not have large countries under single governments. Um, yeah, I'm going to skip that. The parts I'm skipping have to do with the destruction, death, and the fighting. The third planet that we went to, I was there for 15 months. This was the first planet encountered that had more than just a humanoid race. This planet also had a cyclopean race as well as an insectoid kind of race. Now, the cyclopean looked just like regular humanoids except for the single eye, and they were also somewhat telepathic. Now, the insectoid race was very telepathic in how they communicated. Now, they were not telekinetic or some of the other psychological or psych abilities, but that they communicated telepathically. The first 15 months we were there, again, our MO was to help the civilian governments and the civilian population get organized, help them build up their stores, help them to create a defense industry so that they could supply their own people with weapons that they needed. And so our mission on this particular planet was challenging beyond what we had experienced before because of the presence of the two other races. They had already been fighting and warring with each other for over a century, and so they didn't trust each other, and it was made our job a lot harder because we had to get them all pulling in the same direction if they were going to survive. Well, it just so happens that the insectoids didn't trust any humans or humanoids, and there were incidents that started happening because, again, we were trying to get them to get on board, and they didn't like some of the things that the leadership was doing, and they struck back. One of the things that they ended up striking back was a shuttle that I happened to be on at one time. The medical injuries I'd sustained during that shuttle crash were too much, and the local medical facilities weren't enough. So I was shipped back to Mars for 11 months of regeneration therapies and recovery, and also learning to use my nanite enhancements again in the new limbs that I had been given. When those 11 months of medical treatment and relearning were over, I was sent back to Calidus 3 to help with the rebuilding efforts. And it gave me a chance, an opportunity to see what happened after the war, what they were doing. And the war period, they were very strict on the use of additional advanced technologies. And what that means is they wouldn't let us use it. Now, I realized later the reason for that was because they were trying to get the losses as high as they could before they started allowing the use of advanced technologies. After the war, Calidus 3, it was just the opposite. How fast can we get to a super advanced technology? And they opened all the gates. Now, this turned their civilization upside down because their religious beliefs, and they had their own versions, their family structures, their town structures. It forced them to change the way that they did things from a family level on up through the top of their civilization. Now, surprisingly enough, when I got back to Calidus 3, I also learned that there had been a number of families that were given charge of certain geographical areas. Now, sounds awful familiar. There are a number of families here on Earth that have, shall we say, responsibilities that they feel that they are entitled to. What it turns out that was happening through these false flags was they were setting up cabal operations. If you can imagine a what's it called? They were trying to set up the planet for a cabal-like operation. They didn't want to wait 100 years or more to reach a single world government, so they sped it up. They made it go faster. That was the reason behind the war and all the losses, because these people were willing to agree to the terms because the alternative was defeat and extinction. So that was quite a realization to come to, and that the whole purpose was to speed up the one world government process by the techniques that they used. They didn't have to wait 100 years. They did it in about 10. Now, when I was there, I was able to help them rebuild, help them to build orbital facilities. I recall standing on the observation deck of one in particular, in which it was a large glass wall, and when I say glass, it's transparent steel, and which was looking out over the planet. And I could remember looking out and seeing lights on the shadow areas and seeing the rest of the planet lit up and feeling like I was standing on the edge of space. It was unimaginable. We completed a lot of missions in which we were bringing people from the sticks or the boonies or from the extremely rural areas and helping them to make their way into more urbanized areas, so that the governments that had been set up, those 12 families, could provide a place for them to work, how nice, food and water and shelter and taxes and fiat currency and all the other things that came with it. Now, I did that for 26 months before my next deployment, which was returning to be a trainer. The policy of IDARF is that they do not allow any trainers, any people, any soldiers to become trainers unless they have served at least one combat deployment. And their reasoning is actually quite simple. It's combat Darwinism. If you survive, then you are eligible or can teach. So I went back to the 333rd Training Regiment, in which I was helping to train new soldiers. Now, one of the questions that I get is, well, how did that work out? What did you think about that? Well, that was around the time that I had started putting pieces together and realizing the duplicity of the false flags. And so I had mixed feelings, because here I am helping to train these soldiers to go out and to do the same things that I had done to help defend these planets. And I was, on one hand, very proud of the soldiers and what they had done and overcome, and the training that they had accomplished, and all of the many things that they were able to do. But I was not happy about it because of the duplicity of what was involved. Now, if I had spoken out, they probably would have mind wiped the memory from me so that I would continue on as a non-troubling, non-problem soldier. Now, I don't recall if that had happened, but knowing myself, and I think that is one of the challenges that we are faced with, is know yourself. And knowing myself, I wouldn't have been able to stay quiet. Now, one of the deals is that in order for them to use some of the technologies, they had to do everything within their power to return each of the soldiers back to their departure time and place, which meant they couldn't space me or get rid of inconvenient problems. What it means is that they would have used a mind wipe technology to to help erase those nagging problems. Oh, wrong direction. Okay. At this point, I would like to open up for questions. I know that, the time that we had, I really had to blast through it quickly. So, yes.
How do you care for your brain with your mind?
Can we get people to stick into the mic here
Oh.
so it's picked up by the live?
How do you care for your brain after the mind wipe? And have you had any after effects of the limbs that were reground?
That's a great question. If you didn't hear it, the outcome of taking care of your mind and the changes in the limbs that were replaced. Randy Kramer said it nicely when he said it's a 20-year process of healing, and I couldn't agree more. And that, the mental process of going through the healing and clearing the traumas is going to be individualized for each person. I mean, and there are thousands of SSP experiencers or volunteers out there that have gone through some version of the SSP and have had their minds tinkered with. Now, your question about the limbs, I can tell you that the restless leg, restless arm syndrome is present in the limbs that were replaced.
So this all started on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still a little unclear as to what the motivation is for this cabal to go from planet to planet and ostensibly looking like they're helping the people of these various planets.
Mm-hmm.
What's in it for them? Is it a resource-based thing, or because you have to get something tangible for fiat money, or
Sure.
it's not worth the effort, right?
Sure.
Can you talk about the economics and stuff?
Sure. That's a great question. The cabal were not the ones calling the shots. It was the Draco and their bosses, the AI, were the ones that were ultimately calling the shots. They were franchising evil, is what they were doing. And the cabal weren't involved with the control over those planets, but they had to provide soldiers to pay for the Earth moon base that they had taken over. Does that answer? The economics of what was involved had to do with the AI and the Draco wanting to gain control over additional populations.
So
They were
people
using.
of Earth to do that.
That's correct.
Okay, so all right, yeah. All right, well, yeah, all right. I got a few more questions.
Okay.
Are you able to talk a little bit more about some of the technology you mentioned, like some kind of nano health or
Sure.
type of thing? Number 1, 2, the mind wipe technology, and 3, the shuttle being blown out of the air.
The what? The last one?
You mentioned about the shuttle being taken down by the Germans.
Okay. Yes. The shuttle being knocked out. Medical technologies, the nanite enhancement therapies. When I first received that shot, it was the second day that I was in the FIG. The medical in processing that I went through, I guess I'd expected it to look like mercury in a shot, hypodermic needle. Well, it was kind of cloudy. It was very, it just looked like cloudy liquid. What it does is the base level of nanites go in because they are created with a generic DNA structure. So the first thing that the nanites have to do is they have to go in and create a foundation in which the soldier's DNA is then used to create the various systems that the nanites need. Now, what does that mean? Well, they created what appeared to be circuitry on the outside of the eyes that didn't affect the vision negatively, but it gave us the ability to zoom as well as night vision. Every single gland in the body was altered so that you could control your sleep. Again, that biofeedback that I had mentioned earlier, in which you're able to isolate and control different portions of your body, because they were able to, during the learning process, they were able to, well, for the lack of a better way of putting it, make a certain area either electrically shocked or vibrate from the nanites so that you could identify it. Okay, that's such and such gland. If there was no sensory organs there, then what they would do is that they would create a chain from the location with no nerves so that you could then have a created pathway in which you could identify glands, tissue. You could focus your nanites to a particular part on the body so that the healing process would speed up. The nanite enhancement therapies, the way that it was first explained to me, and having seen it through my own experiences, was that it gave the soldiers the best chances for survival. So that's I hope that answers your. Sure. Well, we've got 5 minutes left. Yes.
Right, good evening. You kind of touched on this already. I wanted to get your opinion on if you're for drip disclosure or full disclosure now.
Sure. Well, you know, one of the things about the drip disclosure is that, you know, it's taking forever. That's the problem with it. Now, the other side of that is having seen a civilization get turned upside down because of technology being injected into it. That's not something that I would want my brothers and sisters and loved ones to go through. Now, the disclosure plan that's being acted out and carried out right now was made by the very people that kept it secret from us for 80 plus years. The same people that kept it secret developed this disclosure plan. And what is it? Well, the disclosure plan is to release technology that, by the way, we have already paid for through black budget projects to companies and universities so that they can release or discover this new technology, like transparent steel, like a neural interface for 3 separate drones, those kinds of discoveries. That is the drip disclosure. What I would like to see happen and am working on is a crowdsourced, transparent, civilian-involved transition process. The people that made that plan that we're seeing right now, okay, thank you for holding the helm for the last 80 years and lying to us and keeping the truth from us. This is where I think that the people need to get involved and to develop. And it's going to have to cover medical, transportation, environmental, power. Once we reach advanced technologies on power, guess what? Power industry is now obsolete. So what are the workers, the millions of people that work for power companies going to do? Well, they get transitioned into another job. They have to do, well, that's what we need to figure out. That's the kind of thing that I'm working on, and one of the projects that I'm working through.
Thank you.
Sure. So to answer your question, I'd like to have it quick, but I think that we need to get more people involved with that process. I don't want their plan. I want our developed plan. So.
I was just curious about the time that you were away. Did you make friends among your fellow comrades in arms?
Sure.
And so are they out now too?
There are about, after they established and got the program up and running, there are about 5,000 a year that transition in and out. Now, the similarity between the friends that I had in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the friends that I had in IDARF was that, yes, you make friends. As an officer, they didn't want us to interact too much, and that same thing applies to the U.S. Army. They keep a separation between officers and enlisted because of the need to maintain positive control over command structure. But yes, I did make some friends. I made some people that I didn't recall or don't recall and haven't run into. I've got one person that I knew from my deployments that I'm not sure if this person is awake yet, and I believe in free will, and I'm not going to force that on somebody.
And one other quick question is, you say they think these plans out and they go for 100 years out, but they're the ones who are setting up these plans are not going to be here in 100 years.
Right.
Or are they?
Right.
Or did they just reincarnate into the same families like they did the 12 families? They just
Well,
had
that's a great question. My thoughts on that are the medical technologies are sufficient enough that they can extend the life to 150, 180 years. So the very people that are making those plans at the top, the ones that die, my suspicion is that they are either moved off planet so that they're no longer within the public realm here and are still alive, or the consciousness transfer technology in which they're able to relocate a consciousness into a new body. Is that, sure.
Hello. I was just curious about the timelines that you listed for how long you were deployed. Is that in Earth time? Is that an interplanetary time? Or are they the same?
That's a good question. The time dilation, depending on where you're at, let me start by saying that time is an illusion. And, you can take a test in which you have a clock on the top of a mountain. It's going to read different than a clock at the base of the mountain. If you've got enough accuracy on that clock, you can measure that difference. So the sidereal time that I was deployed would have been close to Earth time. So the months of deployment would have been close to that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for sharing your story.
Sure.
So you mentioned all these planets that you were deployed on and all these various wars. Did you have interactions that you can remember with the native people?
Sure.
And could you possibly describe some of those?
Sure. Great question. The interactions that we had with the natives, we had to work very closely with them because, again, we were helping to train them. And so you think about the mission that is publicized of the special forces within the Western military is they are trainers of indigenous populations. Well, we had the same mission with the indigenous populations on these planets. There were cases where we would sleep out in the same area. We were basically embedded in their units to serve as one combined unit. We got to know them very well, similar to getting to know somebody that you're training with for years or fighting alongside for years. We were involved with lots of one particular mission in which one of the tactics that they used was to melt the Arctic and Antarctic ice on those planets so that they would raise the sea levels to flood out coastal areas. And this particular cave city that we were helping to clear out was under threat of being flooded. And we worked with the city, the village elders, essentially, to help relocate all those people to a high and dry place. Incidentally, one of the little kids ended up staying and had to go get found by some of our troops.
Were these human-like people?
They are humanoid, yes. Looks and appearances just like the rest of the human population here. They have dark hair, light hair. The size and height were a little bit smaller, generally speaking.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Jason, thanks so much for everything you do. So, if you were to speak with a fellow SSP insider or experiencer, what advice would you give them towards helping them maybe recall some memories or integrate some of their experiences if they're still at the beginning of their awakening process? Or would you say that it's a mistaken effort to do that intentionally rather than having them recover those memories naturally on their own?
Sure. That's a great question. One of the things I went through when I first started recalling was, darn it, I want to remember everything. Well, again, like I said earlier, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you proclaim. Yeah, there are some things that I wish I hadn't remembered. I think trust the process, seek out answers. The advice that I would give to somebody is to do research, do spiritual research, do information research. The path that I followed for awakening is going to be different than everybody else. It's an individual path. And what I can tell you is that the path that I followed, for instance, I would go online looking for information on, I'll just pull something random, a name, a German name. And I didn't know where it was. I didn't know where to find it. And so I would start looking, random stuff. Well, one of the ships that was used as a landmark during our training was the SS Schwabenland. Now, allegedly, it was sunk by the Allies after it had been filled up with chemical weapons somewhere in a deep, dark place of the Atlantic. Well, number one, there weren't a lot of chemical weapons in World War II, enough to fill a ship this size. Number two, its alleged location is still a national security secret. Well, this ship, I saw it when we were training. They used it as a landmark. When I was doing random searches, I found the image of that ship and knew immediately that's the ship. Now, I did 1930s cargo ship searches. So the process may take time, but I think the advice that I would give to somebody is to use that time. Don't imbalance or unbalance the rest of your life during the process. The people that love you and that you love and care about are going to be even more important after a SSP veteran starts remembering. So the advice that I would give is continue on with your daily activities. Don't become unbalanced in trying to find answers.
Thanks again, Jason.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, do you know if Richard Feynman was in on the cover-up of the Challenger? He ascribed a different reason for the explosion.
I'm not familiar with Richard Feynman.
He helmed the investigation that found it was a cold day and the rubber gasket didn't expand enough to stop the gas from leaking out and exploding.
Gotcha. What I can tell you is that I worked at Kennedy Space Center for a period of about 2 years. And the time that I was working there, there were still a lot of engineers and senior executives that had been there in 1986 when the shuttle was lost. And I'll tell you that the opinion of the engineers was that it shouldn't have happened. In talking to them, the information that I had gleaned from conversations with these rocket scientists was that shouldn't have happened.
Last question.
Sure.
Do you know which individuals the Antarctic Germans had in the executive branch, I think you said, of U.S. government in '59?
Sure. No. And even if I did know, I don't want members of my family to start disappearing by naming names.
Speaking of which, last question.
Sure.
Why haven't they silenced you?
Well, I would say that my coming forward, I had kept it as quiet and I kept it as quiet as possible. And so when I came forward, it came out in a big way, as big as I could arrange or as big as I could manage. Why haven't they? Well, I'm still out talking to people, and if I suddenly turned up hanging from a red scarf on a doorknob, that people would probably notice that. So am I being accredited or sanctioned to come out with this information? No. No, but I feel a need to help as much as I can in the disclosure process by telling the information that I have in my experiences. And, you know, there are thousands of people that come back from these SSP programs and may not understand why they've got, you know, PTSD or depression or any number of other psychological problems. And they, you know, find help at the bottom of a bottle or any number of other non-healthy means. And so why haven't they done anything? I think that the world is awakening at an exponential rate now. And so maybe they want the more information to come out. Maybe the times are changing. We can always hope.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Just a quick question. I'm trying to get clear in my mind. It seems so confusing when you talk about the whole timeline and the a lot of things that were attributed to the cabal. Just seems like it was just plain old U.S. government. So where's like the breakdown? Who's who? And you know. Who's worse?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the things allegedly done by the German contingency in the U.S. who get the moniker the cabal. I can't see the difference in sort of behavior.
Right. Yes.
So who's who? And was there ever any division that was like purely like U.S. government, not controlled by either faction, I would say?
There was.
Thank you.
There was. I would say that the cabal's plans for world domination go back from the research that I've found to the American War of Independence. And, okay, 1 minute. How do we know who's who? Well, this screen gives you an idea of who is involved. I mean, there are 10 companies that own the majority lion's share of media on the planet. And so I think your own discernment, I think as more truth comes out, I think once we deliver a transition plan, then we have something to say, this is what we want. Look, you can lie to us as much as you want about not having this technology. We know different. But yeah, I think that the question is, that's a valid one. And I don't know the answer because they've got people embedded everywhere, Mars Germans and the cabal. Some of them don't even know they're working for them.
My question is regarding the mind wipe. Does that work for dreams? Like, say, for instance, I'm dreaming of some of the planets that you were talking about. Does that, I mean, how does the mind wipe work?
The mind wipe, it's kind of a misnomer, the terminology. It's actually a mind memory isolation. They lock it away. Global consciousness means that you can tap into the Akashic records to gain access to information, or it's your own experiences that you're recalling that have been locked away, and you know that's part of the journey, is to determine which part of that it is, and putting those pieces of the puzzle together.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Hey, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you.